Hello everyone, welcome. I want to talk today about something I'm calling deep listening, and I'm really referring to more of a, tribal, high suvida. I'm talking more about a tribal type of listening that goes back thousands of years. So this is nothing new. And it's really more geared towards, the original inhabitants of our land, right? That this is the kind of listening they've done. And, but it's not a modern day type of listening that we do because our culture is so fast. Our culture doesn't like to listen, number one, in general. We like our listening to be short and quick, and then we have something to respond with. And when we do intend to listen, we intend it more so, the more, like in mental health, the more focus on listening tends to be on the cognitive piece of it. So how are we interpreting what you're saying? And we're gonna say that back to you. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a different form of listening. But I'm talking about a kind of listening that is a healing. It invokes a healing process within us that because we're in connection with someone else who is witnessing our pain and isn't getting freaked out by it, because that's also what happens a lot in our society, is that when we have something intense and hard to share, the person listening to that gets triggered and gets overwhelmed by that, and they can't sustain their attention, and so they do something to get out of that process. And so they might ask a question, or they might give some advice, or they might do something that sidetracks the whole process, the healing process. So what I'm talking about is this deep listening where you get listened to. So the dynamic of this particular type of listening is, and you do it in relationship, and the relationship part of it is key because it's the relationship that allows the healing to happen. And so, let's just assume that I'm working on something that I'm having a hard time with. I'm in pain, for example, or I'm remembering a painful experience and I'm getting listened to. So what that really looks like is that the person who's listening to me listens without judgment. So I'm allowed to say the really horrible things that I might be thinking in that moment. Whether that be, I don't want to be on this earth anymore, or I can't stand somebody. I want them out of my life, which may or may not be true. There's no judgment. So that's an important piece of the listener, is that they just allow you to say whatever's going on around in your head, or in your heart, and just knowing that, trusting the process rather than judging the value of what's coming out of your mouth, if that makes sense. And so that would be one piece. And then the listener also doesn't give advice. So it's not time to step in and say, well, what I really think you should do is if you just think positively about that. And there is a time and place for positivity, absolutely, but that's not the moment for that. The moment that I would be having in that moment would be much more about allowing myself to feel something that's really hard for me. And so I don't need advice in that moment. I'm just allowing my process to happen. So there's also no comparison. So, that happened to my sister too, and this is what she did. So that's also not helpful in those emotional, intense moments wherein someone needs deep listening. And then the confidentiality piece. The confidentiality is really important, just to know that I'm going to hold this as a sacred information. I'm going to hold this as a sacred moment that just your mind and your body and your spirit are processing something, are working on something and I'm honored to be here. Like, that's sort of the posture that a listener would have, just recognizing the sacredness of that moment and allowing that to happen, and that you're the witness of that. Hi, Lori. And hi, Nexia Solo. And I'm sorry if I get your name wrong a lot, so I'm trying. And so, yeah, so those are really the other thing is that after the listener does a deep listening process with someone, and it's done, it's kind of gotten completed. And again, I just want to reiterate that is a healing process. That's why I call it deep listening, is because when it gets witnessed by somebody who can maintain your goodness, and that's another aspect of the listener, even though you might be falling apart, even though you're a puddle on the floor, even though your mind is confused and all messed up, that person knows that you're a good person, and that you're smart, that you're able to figure it out. You're able to figure out what's going on. Not necessarily in that moment, but you're actually moving those confusing thoughts out of the way, so that you can think well. And there's neuroscience behind all that. So just to be clear about that. And so, yeah, the role of the listener is huge from that standpoint of just holding that space and allowing it to unfold for the person who's being listened to. So that's really the crux of what deep listening is. You're just letting that process happen. And so for me, like, if I'm being listened to and I'm having big feelings about something, every emotion we have that exists has a way that it leaves our body. And it leaves our body through a variety of ways, through crying, tears. There's chemicals in tears. There's, tears from sadness have stress hormones in them. We might shake, we might sweat, we might laugh. Even yawning is a way to release physical tension. So actually, in deep listening, I always encourage yawning. It's not because someone's bored, it's because they're releasing physical tension. It's a very good sign that someone is able to feel safe enough to release that tension. And so that's another aspect of the person who's the listener, is that they're trying to build safety in the relationship. And we do that not by inserting our opinions. We do that by listening well and accepting whatever the person is going through, whatever the person is expressing. And we build safety that way. We also build a lot of safety non-verbally, which I won't really get into today, but that's actually, we build more safety non-verbally than we do verbally. So anyway, just to also reiterate that when I get listened to in a deep listening way, that I allow my body to move as it wants to. And so sometimes I move my body, sometimes I push against something. If I'm feeling anger, I might stand up and push against something. And so I move my body the way I want to, and I might shake and shiver, and I might cry, I might just get angry and I make some noises. All of these are our natural processes of how our body releases hard things that have happened. And the unfortunate part is that our culture doesn't really accept those things. Like, they think they're weird or strange. And this is something I teach actually to people all over the world, because it's so beautiful and such a great way to let your body own once again, to own your body and own your feelings and to own who you are. It's a very powerful thing to do. And so I just highly encourage people to find people in your world who might be able to listen to you. I've talked about this a lot in most of my talks. It's probably one of my main top 3 strategies, I would say, for just having a strong mind and to support myself well, is to get listened to. And it's a funny thing too, because we oftentimes don't think that way. Like, you know, if I'm struggling with something, I'll just say to myself, oh, I need to get listened to. And it sounds so strange, I know, compared to modern culture, but it is so powerful. So hi, Krishni. It's so powerful thing to do for yourself and to have a regular practice of it. I get listened to regularly. And you can actually look this up on the internet too. Listening partnerships is a way that one of the forms of deep listening. It's the one that I follow. The practice that I do is called listening partnerships, actually. And so anyway, I just wanted to share this with you, and I will share it more often as well, because it's such a wonderful way to support ourselves, especially when we're going through something hard, when we have feelings about things. I will also say that I think most of us don't realize the volume of feelings that we carry, because we get so used to pushing aside our feelings. Like, that's respected and admired in our culture for the most part. Like, don't feel your feelings, and let's just be brave and strong and not have feelings. Well, in actual fact, feelings are incredibly beneficial. Feelings are the motor, the engine of development for young children. And so there's more and more research all the time about the importance and value of feelings. And one of the benefits I have found with this deep listening practice is that when I have a place to put my feelings, when I can offload them and shake and cry and rage if I have to, or be powerful if I have to, when they get listened to, they don't run me as much. Because I've put them someplace and I've offloaded them. And so my good thinking is active more often, and I'm not run by the emotional piece of what's going on in my life as much. And so it's something to think about, and I know many, many people who have had great success with this. So I hope you can find someone you feel safe enough, and that's the key ingredient. You have to feel safe with this person, that you can listen to each other. And actually it's a practice where there is a structure to it, where you share listening time. And so, and I use a timer. You use a timer with it. So, like, for example, we might say, let's do 10 minutes each. One person goes, the other person listens. At that end of that time, you ask a whimsical question to help get the listener would ask a whimsical question of the person talking, so that you can get their attention back. And then you just switch roles. And so that way no one dominates the listening and the talking either. And I would not recommend doing this with partners. I would recommend doing it with someone else in your life, or it could be someone that you don't even know that you could decide that you want to try this with, or someone you meet just new in your life too. So I just invite you to try this, because it's a beautiful experience and a way to really connect with yourself in a very deep way, and to connect with other people as well, because the things that are rolling around in our hearts and our minds that are bothering us, that are hard, get in our way of connecting with others too. And so using this practice to open ourselves up to more connection, more love in our lives, that is just a beautiful path and a beautiful journey to take. So thank you so much for being here today, and I look forward to tomorrow. All right, bye-bye.